Welcome, curious minds, to The Deep Dive. Today we're taking a really personal journey, diving into a fascinating memoir, Look Me in the Eye, by John Elder Robison. Our mission, basically, is to unpack the insights of a man who, well, navigated a world that didn't quite get him until he finally got himself. We're digging into the book itself, looking for those nuggets that help you understand maybe not just Asperger's, but what it means to adapt, to innovate, and find your own way to connect.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating here is this isn't just, a story. It's really a firsthand look. It gives you this unique lens into how a mind that's wired differently processes the world, social stuff, even really complex engineering problems. We'll explore those early struggles, his honestly incredibly inventive solutions, and how he eventually found his place. And just for context, Robison was diagnosed later in life with Asperger syndrome, for those maybe less familiar. Asperger's is, well, it's understood as a neurodevelopmental difference. It often involves unique ways of communicating socially, really focused interests, sometimes a preference for routine, and often, like with Robison, you see these remarkable talents in specific areas. So yeah, let's unpack this extraordinary life.
Okay, so starting early, Robison talks about feeling inherently defective pretty much from the get-go. Even as a toddler, people notice things like a mechanical way of walking, kind of rigid expressions, and this tendency to just be in his own world,
Yeah.
totally absorbed in Tinker Toys and things like that. He knew he was different, but why? That was the mystery, the painful part for decades, really.
That really brings up a key point right away, doesn't it? I mean, imagine experiencing the world where something as basic as making eye contact feels totally unnatural. Or where you do something you think is kind, and it just gets completely misinterpreted. He tells this story, trying to make friends with a girl named Chucky. He thought he was being nice, offering her a stick like he'd pet a dog, and he was just baffled and hurt when she didn't react like that. Or another time, he tried to show her the right way to play with a toy truck because, logically, he knew how it worked.
Right. His logic versus social understanding.
Exactly. These aren't just like cute kids' stories. They show how these fundamental differences in interpreting kindness or helpfulness can cause so much friction, and it leaves people feeling really misunderstood, rejected, even when their intentions are, well, perfectly good.
And that eye contact thing you mentioned, it's so striking. For him, it just felt normal not to stare into someone's eyes. Why would you? It was uncomfortable, seemed pointless to him. He realized much, much later that if he'd just known about this difference younger, it could have saved him so much hurt. He really felt like his good intentions were always seen as bad behavior. What a disconnect to live with.
Exactly. And that constant feeling of rejection, of misunderstanding, it led him to retreat, which is, a pretty common response when you feel out of sync. He found comfort and a kind of understanding with machines. Even as a little kid, he talks about his tractor, Chippy, saying, "It was never mean to me. I always got along with machines."
That makes perfect sense.
It does, right. Because machines are predictable, they're logical, they respond consistently, they don't demand these complex social dances or judge your intentions. For a mind struggling with all the ambiguity of human interaction, the clear cause and effect of mechanics was like a safe haven, empowering even.
So, finding that safety in machines, it seems like he then started finding really creative ways to navigate the people world too, right?
Yeah.
This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Because he couldn't connect normally, he developed these unique, almost like performance-based ways to interact and get noticed. He became the class clown, a trickster. And some of his pranks were pretty elaborate. Like, remember the story of Bovinius, the cow star he made up for his grandparents?
Oh, yeah.
He mixed just enough truth with fiction to make it believable, and his grandfather just ran with it, told everyone.
Yeah.
It was his way of getting laughs with him, not at him.
Yeah.
A very constructed way into social stuff.
And his relationship with his younger brother, who he called Snort, then Varmint, which is just classic Robison naming that gives us another really fascinating look. In his own way, Robison really took charge of his brother's upbringing almost.
He taught him to walk, right?
He taught him to walk, yeah. And he did these experiments with him. He describes it almost scientifically, like dropping Varmint into a hole to test a trap. And he notes, Varmint would often go along because he had fun sometimes and didn't usually get damaged.
It usually get damaged. Oh, my goodness.
I know, but it wasn't malicious. It was his way of exploring, understanding, interacting, almost like a science project with the one person who seemed to accept his weird methods. It really shows how neurodivergent people might show care or build bonds in ways that just don't fit our usual expectations.
And those pranks, those experiments, they got more sophisticated, didn't they?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that incredible story where he fooled his mom into thinking varmint was kidnapped.
The Paul story. Yes.
Yeah, by this mysterious Paul who took him on a train ride, and then, bam, varmint pops out of hiding with a whole story ready, even adding his own detail about getting ice cream.
It's amazing.
It's not just a kid's prank, is it? It shows this emerging skill in manipulating social situations, controlling the narrative. Maybe not connecting emotionally in the way we'd expect, but mastering a different kind of social engineering, creating this shared, fabricated reality. It's a really unusual grasp of social dynamics.
Absolutely. It wasn't just being naughty, it was complex social strategy. You see these early signs of his highly analytical mind, that pattern-seeking brain, trying to figure out the totally unpredictable world of humans. And yeah, maybe to us it seems manipulative, but for Robison, these were like brilliant solutions to a social world that felt like a foreign language. It was his way to get attention, create interaction, have some control in relationships that probably felt totally out of his control otherwise.
And all this was happening against a backdrop of, well, a really chaotic home life. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
His parents' marriage was basically a wreck by the time his brother was born. His mom had mental health struggles. His dad struggled with alcoholism. He says they pretty much despised each other. Just a deeply unpredictable, unstable environment.
Yeah, really tough.
And then there's this weird but crucial turning point with that therapist, Dr. Finch, the one who encouraged his free expression and told him to call his parents slave and stupid.
Which is certainly unconventional.
Right. But incredibly, the doctor also stepped in and stopped his father from hitting him.
And that's the thing. Despite how bizarre Dr. Finch might seem, or his methods, that intervention was profound. It gave Robison a boundary, a little bit of agency in that chaos.
A voice, maybe.
A voice, exactly, however strange. And some protection he didn't have before. The fact that he remembers those specific suggestions taking hold when nothing else seemed to work, that tells you something. It suggests that even, let's say, imperfect help can make a huge difference for a kid, especially if it gives them some feeling of control when everything else feels uncontrollable. It was liberating for him, even if it was really unorthodox.
Okay, so with this sort of fragile sense of control at home, maybe it's not surprising his focus then just shifted completely to a world he could control. Logic, predictability, electronics. His path really changed when he got that electronics kit at 13. He struggled at first, but he got these books, Basic Electronics, the Radio Amateur's Handbook, taught himself soldering, figured out components.
Just dove right in.
Totally. He got so good, he was basically adopted as a pet in the engineering labs at the local university, fixing things, building things. He even made a crude stun gun he tested on his brother.
Oh, varmint again, always the test subject.
Always poor varmint. But yeah, this hands-on self-taught learning was absolutely pivotal.
And what's really key here is how he made that leap from abstract equations to actual physical stuff. That's hard for a lot of engineers. Robison describes this amazing breakthrough where he could visualize complex calculus functions. But not just see them, he could translate the waves I saw in my mind into sounds I imagined in my head. And those sounds matched the circuits he built.
Wait, you could hear the circuits working?
Essentially, yeah. He wasn't just seeing a diagram. He was like hearing the energy flow, feeling the current in his mind. This incredibly unique, multi-sensory way of thinking gave him this intuitive edge. You know, maybe compared to engineers relying just on schematics or math.
Wow.
It really propelled his career. It let him bypass difficulties he had with traditional math and literally hear the answers to complex electronic problems.
That's an incredible ability. Hearing the music of electronics. No wonder musicians noticed him. He drops out of high school at 15, gets a 96% on his GED, by the way, and just finds his niche, joins a band called Fat, then boom, lands a job with Britannia Row Audio, Pink Floyd's sound company.
Yeah, big time.
Fixing and designing gear for their huge tours. This was a place where his intense focus, his technical skill, it wasn't just, okay, it was valued highly. He wasn't just fixing, he was innovating.
And this is really where those Aspergian traits, the things that made childhood socially hard, became this huge professional advantage. That ability to focus so intensely, almost obsessively on technical problems, to understand machines on this deep level, to be relentlessly logical, that made him invaluable.
Right.
He talks about being thrilled seeing Meatloaf play to a sold-out crowd, not because of the rock star energy, but because the sound system he worked on was fucking great.
The engineer's satisfaction.
Totally.
Yeah.
That was his validation. That environment gave him purpose, belonging. It was a place where his unique skills were exactly what was needed.
And the peak of that, maybe, The ultimate expression of his talent was when Kiss hired him.
Ah, the Kiss guitars. Legendary.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ace Frehley wants a guitar that literally catches fire during his solo.
Yeah.
And Robison, with his friend Jim Bouton, they just figure it out. They make the famous smoking guitar, and later a rocket guitar with lights and smoke.
Incredible problem solving.
Pure creative engineering on a massive rock stage.
Uh-huh.
And his pay reflected it went from like $80 a week with Fat to $80 every few hours for this super specialized work.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, that whole music scene period was so important because his, let's call it misfit nature, wasn't just accepted, it was kind of celebrated. He even said, the creative people in the music scene all seem to be misfits, so I blended right in.
He found his tribe, in a way.
Exactly. An environment where being eccentric was almost expected. It gave him this confidence, this belonging he hadn't really felt before. His intense focus, his unconventional thinking, his knack for how things work. It was exactly what that world needed. For the first time, maybe, the world spoke his language.
But even there, even in that world that seemed to fit better, the social side of things was still tricky for him. He talks about being completely baffled by all the drug and alcohol use, feeling super awkward with groupies.
Right, the backstage stuff.
Yeah, he'd often just rather go back to his hotel room and tinker with guitars than deal with the party scene. So that friction, even in a place that seemed accepting, kind of pushed him again. Pushed him to find an environment he could really control.
Which led him away from music.
Exactly. He pivoted again, left the corporate side of music, took out a second mortgage, huge risk, and started his own business, J.E. Robison Service, fixing high-end European cars.
And what's so interesting there is how he applied that same deep technical skill, that Aspergian need to know everything about something, to cars. He quickly became known as the repair shop of last resort.
People shipped cars across the country to him.
Yeah, Rolls Royces, Land Rovers, stuff nobody else could fix. And that path, being an entrepreneur, it wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about controlling his environment, working mostly with predictable machines again, thriving in a structure he created. And it brought recognition, too, like being asked to join a bank's board of corporators. He said that made him feel legitimate for the first time. It really shows how powerful it can be for neurodivergent folks to create their own environments where they can truly shine.
And then comes this huge moment of self-discovery, but like decades later, he's 40 years old. A friend, who is also a therapist, T.R. Rosenberg, hands him a book, Asperger Syndrome by Tony Atwood. And for Robison, this was just staggering, a total thunderbolt realization. He said, there are other people like me, so many. They have a name for us. Changed everything, he said.
Yeah, you can only imagine. That understanding completely reframed how he saw himself. It shifted him from feeling just weird or defective his whole life to understanding he was eccentric, maybe, or more accurately, had the specific neurological makeup.
Gave him a label, but in a good way.
In a validating way, yeah. He talks about actively, almost systematically, learning social skills after that, like making an effort to remember details about friends' families, consciously trying to pick up on conversational cues, humor, things that used to just go right over my head. It wasn't about fixing himself. It was finally having a framework to understand his own experience, not as a flaw, but as a condition with its own characteristics. It's such a powerful example of the validation that comes with self-understanding.
And his marriage to Martha, who he calls Unit 2, which is just so Robison, that really shows how he found this deep, real connection, but completely on his own terms.
Yeah, that's a lovely part of the story.
He praises her amazing ability to read his really subtle expressions, her unwavering belief in him, how she'd patiently explain social things, and how she would pet him, that physical comfort he'd apparently craved since he tried to pet Chucky with a stick as a kid.
Full circle.
Totally. He even talks about finding comfort, just sleeping in piles with her, feeling safe and calm. It's just a beautiful picture of finding love and belonging, not by changing who you are, but by finding someone who gets and accepts your unique operating system.
And that connection with Martha, it also brings up this interesting point about empathy. Robison says he experiences true empathy for family, close friends. And for him, it's physical, like feeling tension or nausea if they're suffering.
A visceral reaction.
Exactly. But for strangers, he describes it as logical empathy. He understands intellectually that they're sad, but he doesn't have that same physical or emotional response. He even kind of questions what he sees as hypocritical dramatic reactions from some people about tragedies far away, seeing it as maybe performative.
That's challenging our usual ideas, isn't it?
It really does. It challenges our assumption that empathy looks and feels the same for everyone. It pushes us to think maybe empathy isn't just one thing. Maybe different neurotypes experience and express it differently, but no less genuinely. His view urges us to look past the surface and understand the different valid ways people connect and show compassion.
And that incredible journey, it really comes full circle when he decides to move back to Amherst, the actual town where he felt so humiliated as a kid. He moves back with Martha and their son, Cubby.
Takes courage.
A lot of courage. And what he finds is this profound sense of healing. He says the bad people were gone, and people welcomed him. He realized he'd finally learned how to be friendly, and he describes this moment, this revelation, at a UMass basketball game, just watching people interact easily. He thinks this is what life is like for normal people. Having friends who look out for you, not feeling like you have to know everything, and this is key, not feeling like a fraud.
Wow, that's powerful.
It really is.
Yeah.
A sense of peace, belonging, and just authentic self-acceptance finally arriving. So John Elder Robison's deep dive into his own life, it really shows us that being different isn't necessarily a deficit, right? It's often just a unique operating system for the mind, with its own strengths, its own challenges. His story is just this powerful testament to our ability to adapt, to invent, and to find connection and fulfillment on our own terms, even if the world doesn't get your language at first.
Yeah, and if we connect that to the bigger picture, his memoir really pushes us to question our own assumptions about what's normal. Normal behavior, normal social interaction, even what empathy means. Maybe what we see as odd or weakness is actually just a different kind of logic, a different way of experiencing the world, often with incredible precision, depth, and unique insights we'd otherwise miss.
So what does all this mean for you listening? Maybe next time you meet someone who communicates or interacts or even solves problems in a way that seems unexpected, just pause, consider. Are they struggling to fit a mold that wasn't made for them, feeling that disconnect Robison talked about? Or are they, maybe like Robison, just waiting for you to see the amazing insights their unique perspective offers? How much understanding, how many brilliant ideas, how much deeper connection could we find if we just took a moment to try and understand the different languages of human experience? Thank you for diving deep with us today.